In firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. For over 20 years, the FireStore has equipped first responders with trusted gear featuring brands like MSA Carnes for helmets and Seek for thermal imaging cameras. Stay prepared. Visit thefirestore.com today. The FireStore, your trusted safety partner.
This podcast is brought to you by Flex 7 from TenCate Protective Fabrics. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology. Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatefabrics.com/Flex 7.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, those toxins lead to cancer. Protect yourself with Magnegrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes. To get free grant assistance, visit magnegrip.com.
Hi, welcome to December's issue of Fireground Strategies and other stuff from the street on Fire Engineering Talk Radio. I cannot believe it's December already. It's insane, Chief. I don't know how it happens so fast. But one thing before we get started, I want to say, I just looked up the statistics. 1,885 civilians were lost in residential fires this year, up till today, and the year's not out, which sounds like it is a horrible number. But it's the first time I can recall it being under 2,000 in a long, long, long time. So we're doing something right, and the public's doing something right. So that's something to keep in the back of your head as we get to the end of the year. Be careful with your Christmas decorations. Careful driving because you don't want to meet your fire departments. But that's it. And today, Chief Avillo and I, we're going to be talking about communication, both in the firehouse and on the fireground. In the firehouse, we have mostly what's called discretionary time, or as Chief Avillo calls it, the soft environment, where we have more time to make our communication more concise. On the fireground, it has to be done sometimes a little quicker, and frame of reference and things like that are so important, especially if you're working with mutual aid companies or people you don't ordinarily work with. Before we move on to that, I have a little story about this week, which I'm thrilled to talk about. The on-duty shift at Wallingford Fire Department, where I retired from, they cooked lunch and invited all the retirees to come and join them for lunch. And I thought that was really cool. You know, sometimes as you separate from the fire service and you move out of the daily routine, it's hard to keep in touch. But I think it was great they reached out and invited us to lunch, and there were people there who never knew me. They weren't working when I retired. And not only just me, but there was a dozen other retirees there that really had a great lunch. And thank you, Battalion Chief Sunwell and the Shift 1 Sweat Hogs. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
The Sweat Hogs.
The good. Sweat Hogs. Yeah, they made that their name after I left. When I was there, I think they called us the Isle of Misfit Toys. I'm not sure. No, I'm making that up. I think he's probably the one who said that, but that's another story. But anyway, I'd like to start off on communications. And, you know, if you've all taken any fire officer classes, they teach you about communications. But we all fall into the mistake of not being clear in what we want done or what we're asking for. What do you think? You agree with that, or you've seen examples of that?
Well, the idea is you know, it's a function of listening, and it's a function of talking. It's like a loop, and if that loop is not practiced with any kind of consistency, you just never, you can never figure that, like, they're hearing what you're actually telling them.
They're hearing the words, but they might not be receiving the message I am trying to send. And sometimes that could be our fault as the sender,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's their fault because they're not really listening. They're listening to hear what they want to hear, and not blaming them. But we have to work through that on a regular basis, especially as a fire officer.
Absolutely.
You know, I've made the mistakes. I've said things that I thought I was so clear about. And then when it comes to fruition, it's not even remotely what I thought I was saying.
No. Well, it's almost like it's like you're talking to your kids. You gotta tell them 3 times, and at the end of the day, it's like, oh, is that what you meant? But again, you're right. It's a good deal of fault of the superior, not necessarily the subordinate. I mean, you first of all have to teach them how to listen. You got to teach them what to listen for, but you also have to stay consistent with the message that you want to give them. I actually wrote something down here. It says, when there's consistency in delivering the message, there will be consistency in understanding the message.
Yes. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The same style of communication that you use in the firehouse should be very similar to what you use on the fireground.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It makes difference. But I also see, and I vent about this often, but this is part of our problem. Everybody has these in their pocket, and they're so used to doing 10 things at once that they may not be really paying attention to what you do. The phone's vibrating in their pocket, and they're thinking about
Right. They're not there.
what's coming in. No,
They're not there.
I'm going to talk about a failure of one of my supervisors many, many years ago. So he was a deputy chief, and in my department there are staff chiefs. So he was in charge of training and EMS. So he comes into my office and he says, "I need to talk to you." So I was just about to do some live fire training with my shift at the tower we have behind our headquarters. And I said, okay. So I'm sitting at my desk, I'm looking up at him, and he takes out his BlackBerry. This is how long ago it was. He takes out his BlackBerry and he starts texting somebody and then getting texts back. So I'm looking at him. I go, "You interrupted my training period because you had to talk to me, but you're texting somebody else." So he did it for a couple of minutes. I said, "Chief, if you need me, I'll be out on the training ground." And you know what? My message came across loud and clear. I was rude. I was curt, probably unprofessional, but it annoyed me. And my name is Duffy, and you know how I can react to things. I said, "I'll be on the fire ground. If you need to finish this, I'll be on the fire ground with my men." And there was no after effects of that. Never came back to me, never chastised me for walking out on him. But you're coming into my office, taking my time, but then you're doing, maybe he was ordering medical supplies. I don't know what he was doing, but you called me and you wanted to talk. And I thought that was just talk about not communicating. I was like, and I learned a very long time ago, never to pick up my phone if I'm talking to somebody, especially in a supervisory manner. And I never wore a watch when I was working as a firefighter, but I started depending on my phone to check the time. And I realized that looked like I was being unattentive to whoever I was talking to. So I actually bought a wristwatch so I would never do that.
Because see, I never wear a watch.
But it's
a source of stress.
I absolutely agree, but so is looking at my phone.
Of course.
And
they both
when I'm eye to eye looking at somebody, and I'd look at my phone to see what time it is, where I could just glance at my watch and not look like I'm ignoring them. And it's just a trick I used to appear or to be more attentive to who I'm speaking to.
Right. Exactly. So,
yeah, go ahead, boss.
Yeah, it's funny, you talk about that, like communication. Just because you're talking to somebody doesn't mean you're giving information to them, and it doesn't mean that they're listening to it the same way that you're actually giving it.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a function of knowing your people, and them knowing you. There was a thing that is called a ladder of abstracts, and everybody knows what it is. They just probably don't know that's what it's called. And it's when you have somebody that's brand new, and you haven't really communicated with them a lot, you have to really spell everything out. You have to tell them exactly what needs to be done in the exact order it needs to be done. And you have to follow up on that. But as they gain experience, as your relationship with them sort of I don't want to use the word gets better, but it sort of matures a little bit. You can cut corners a little bit with the ladder of abstracts. Like for instance, if I had a brand new company and I wanted them to go and take care of the roof, or a company that I'm not really familiar with, I may have to tell them exactly what I need them to do. Which again, where I worked, we didn't really have to do that. But coming from the fire academy side, sometimes you get stuck in like thinking they know more than they actually know, and they don't know. And it's the same thing back in the firehouse. Like you were before we got on, you were talking about that. But the end of the day, and really, what you're trying to strive for is just to tell them, hey, you got the roof. And they know everything that's supposed to be done, but that takes time, and that takes training, and that takes familiarization between people. That takes understanding of the message and being on the same page, whereas in the beginning, I need to say, look, I need you to grab the 35-foot ladder. I need you to take that ladder and raise it to the roof with 3 rungs above the roof line, and then this would be in a training situation, not
Absolutely.
really on the fireground, but you hope that you don't have to do that on the fireground. Whereas, I would just say to the guy, hey, you got the roof. And even the same thing with division commanders, I would just say to them, you got the roof, and they would know exactly what I meant and exactly what I wanted, I had a situation one time where I had a company and none of them were from my shift. And it was like maybe a second or a third alarm fire going, and it had started, outside, it spread inside, it was all asphalt sided walls, and it made a really nice stop. And they were in one of the apartments in the building, and the battalion chief inside the interior division was calling for lights. So I had company was coming up to the command post, squad 7, and it was 3 guys, and none of them were from my shift, and one of them was an acting captain. So I said to them, look, they need lights up on the 2nd floor. I said, you know what, use the junction box and the reel on the aerial and just get the lights up there. All right, no problem, Chief. We got it. So I'm thinking it goes. I see the reel going into the building. They get, and I'm not really paying attention to what they're doing, because I'm thinking they know what I want them to do. So 5 minutes goes by or so, 10 minutes goes by, and the interior division calls me and says, Chief, we're still waiting on those lights. And I'm looking, and I see this thing snaking into the building, the reel, the wire from the reel up the aerial. And I'm like, you have lights in there? He goes, they're already outside the building. They finished the assignment, I thought. And he said, you want to take a walk in here and take a look? So I walked in, and I transferred command to a captain. I said, just hold the command post for me. And I walked inside, and what they had done was they had put the junction block with that little bulb light on the top of it on the table in the kitchen. They never connected any lights to it. And like these were guys, they weren't on my shift, but they, had some experience. And I thought I had to suit them. Look, I need lights up on the 2nd floor. And they put the junction block with the little light, So, it's the familiarity. And again, it's that ladder of abstracts.
Yeah. And they also work for a different deputy chief.
Yeah.
A different, on a regular, to him, those guys, they may have said, well, his boss would have said, I need you to set up 3 lights up on the floor. Maybe that's the way he normally gave his order, like a micromanager or something, not used to somebody saying, just go set up lights, and I told you about an example of that myself.
And it was my fault.
When we were live. Yes, to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But some of it's the department's fault because 4 shifts operate differently, or 3 shifts, whatever you had. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm going to tell a little story about that in a minute. But I was a lieutenant and had a fairly new guy working with me. And we had some kind of small fire, waste paper basket, trash fire or something. And I told the guy to go get a can And to me, a can is a can. It's 2.5-gallon water extinguisher. That's it. So he came walking in a couple minutes later carrying a CO2 extinguisher. To me, that was mind-boggling, and I started to get a little, I won't say upset, but I was like, what the fuck? But then I realized it's my slang. Nowhere in the fire department, in training manuals. I mean, you read books, people talk about the can all the time. But if you're reading the IFSTA Essentials book, they don't call it a can. And he just came out of the academy or whatever. It's my responsibility to know that he understands that kind of language. He's doing the best he can. He probably just learned whatever this week. Every day is a brand new lesson for him. So to me, I should have said, hey, get me the water extinguisher at that early in his career.
Yeah, he
If I've
probably
never
just
worked
looked
with
in
him.
a compartment, grabbed the first extinguisher he saw.
Yeah, and he did right. He brought me something.
Yeah,
I can't say
yeah.
anything was wrong with it.
But the department, you're right, the department has a responsibility. You know what that responsibility is? It's to have
Consistency.
consistency. Yes, look at that. Consistency across the 4 shifts. And what creates that? SOPs, training,
Training.
communication training. Like we have the format that we use for all of our reports, and all of our reports basically sound the same, with a little deviance, a little bit, but very, very little, but that's, listen, it's all communication. The things on your collar are communication. The lights on the rig are communication. The sounds that you hear when the rig's backing up, that's communication. Everything that on the fireground, everything in the fire department is communication. It doesn't have to be spoken. It doesn't have to be verbal. It could be visual. It could be oral. Is that oral? Audio? You can
Oral,
hear.
but with oral, but with an A.
Yes. It's all communication, and the department is responsible to make sure that communication is consistent across the board.
Yeah. It's funny you said about sounds, and I'm going to tell you an incident that happened with me. I was the shift commander, and I'm walking from the cafeteria back to my desk, and a reserve engine was going out, and the engine coming back in, they were switching it over, because every engine doesn't have everything that they need, so you have to move some. So I'm walking by, and the chauffeur of the engine, I talked to the lieutenant and said, there's a pump. Did it go into pump? Did it do all that? So I'm walking by, and the chauffeur says, yeah, it's in pump. And I heard the transmission or the transfers. It never happened. I can hear it. I've been in the fire service a long time. When it goes into pump, the engine makes a different sound, the pump. So I go, you're not in pump. I walk by, and I wasn't trying to be involved. But I'm walking by, and the driver was getting out of the rig. I said, you're not in pump. Yes, I am. I go, you're not in pump. Yes, I am. The green light's on. So I said, do me a favor.
Mm-hmm.
Open up the discharge in the back. And I said to Lieutenant, put a nozzle on the end of the discharge, just so I could see water come out. Nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Dave, not chauffeuring today. Bring the guy in the back. And that person's going to be the backseat firefighter for tonight. And then we'll work on training issues later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was just like, you can hear. And again, I wasn't even involved, but I know what a pump sounds like when it's engaging. And I just didn't hear the sound. And I wasn't trying to be a micromanager, a dickhead or anything.
No, you're just used to it.
I saw it.
Yeah.
But anyway, and going back to what you said about the 4 different shifts. So one day there was a crew who was on overtime. We had this little 2-man rescue. They mostly did EMS, but they had a working fire. They were firefighters. So they showed up a little late. They came to me and they said, do you want me to start setting up for vertical ventilation? I said, no, the engine company is stalled at the doorway. Go give them a hand. But on their shift, not saying right or wrong, but on their shift, that's what they were always assigned to on their shift. It wasn't a department policy, but their boss always wanted them to start setting up ground ladders for vertical ventilation on a private
Right.
dwelling. That's what they were used to. But to me, it was like, well, I see again, as the incident commander, I see a problem. They're struggling at the front door with the first in line. And that is a higher priority at that time than ventilation, to me.
Right. Of course. Still
Especially when I only have fire showing in one window.
is.
It looks like a room and contents. But
Right.
again, we'll stay way ahead of the game to know exactly what's going on in there.
Yeah. Well, all that stuff, trust signs, sounds on the radio, you hear, like we have specific sounds for specific things. We have, our emergency firefighter down transmission. We have the withdrawal transmissions, you have the PAR transmission. They all sound different. So as soon as you hear that, and that should be a conditioned response, everybody knows that this is what's happening on the fireground. And again, it's all communications. Listen, the logo on your chest, that's communications. And the fire department is very big on a million different ways to communicate. So, but it's really important that everybody be on the same page.
Yeah. Well, there's something that I did. North Hudson does that my department didn't do. And again, going back to 4 different shifts, and this is a department problem. If we're not consistent on certain things, you guys have a laminated card on the front of every rig, correct? With what you're supposed to say when you first.
I'm out almost 10 years, but it was on a dashboard.
Yeah. So for me, I had a certain way of doing my size up. On scene, have a 2.5 story wood frame, fire shown from, the AB corner. That's pretty much it. My initial radio report that they would call it at the NFA, my brief internet. We used the slang that was the size up, what's going on. And at that point, the engine that's coming behind me should know what their operations is supposed to be. The truck should know it.
Right.
And our SOPs were consistent like that. But everybody had a different way of saying things. And sometimes working overtime, working a mutual or a swap, if that's what you call it in your department, a trade. Some things are a little different, and that could cause, again, where the first line was placed, where the spotting of the vehicle was placed because of certain words.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
bumping.
anyway, what we didn't bump. So
bumping.
Tell us what's on your laminated card on the dashboard.
Okay.
And every first arriving officer would say
on the laminated card. I can't think of everything right on it, but I would just give a report. It's got fill in the blanks. So,
Yes.
It's like unit address. So engine 5 on the scene at 3522 Main Street. 3522 Main Street is construction, 5-story occupancy, height, 5-story, ordinary constructed, multiple dwelling. So that would be blank, blank, blank. And under it would have the 5 building construction types, right? Conditions. We have nothing showing. Actions. We are investigating establishment of command. Engine 5 is establishing 35 Main Street command. So it would basically sound like, ladder 3 is on a scene, 3602 Park Avenue. 3602 Park Avenue is a 4-story, ordinary, multiple dwelling. We have smoke showing on floor number 3. Ladder 3 is this is a working fire. Ladder 3 is going to be forcing entry and searching for the location of fire and victims. Ladder 3 is establishing Park Avenue command. And I kind of botched that a little bit, but
well, that's because you're old.
Yeah, it's because I'm old. But here's another thing, though. All right, here's another thing. Triggers. You have to know your triggers, and our triggers are based on different words. For instance, where I stopped a little bit there and I said I have smoke showing 3rd floor, then I went back and said working fire. If I said smoke showing in North Hudson, after I finish the report, the first thing dispatch is going to ask me, fire control will ask me is, do you have a working fire? right? And the reason they do that is because that triggers a whole bunch of different things, calls, move ups, notifications, things like that. That's all triggered by that one single phrase, working fire. So you have to know what your department requires you to say, right? It's just like primary search all clear. It's like water on the fire. It's like the benchmarks, that trigger different things that occur, like water on the fire. That's something that was never really a benchmark when you talked about benchmarks years ago, like, all clear for primary search. But now that's a benchmark. Water is on the fire. So what happens after that? Now we can begin our ventilation operations. We can begin other things that we couldn't really or shouldn't really do unless we have water on the fire. So again, this is another way of communicating that once we have that, the other building blocks of the operation begin to sort of take place. So you got to know your triggers, and be careful of the localisms, because if you got mutual aid coming in, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in this conversation.
Yes.
You got mutual aid coming in, they may not understand your triggers. So, if they're coming in on automatic aid and you do automatic aid, then, they should be part of, your the way you talk on a radio and the way you talk on a Fireground.
Absolutely. It's so funny that you're talking about triggers and having your dispatch react to that. And I'm going to try to avoid too much on dispatch today, because hopefully we're going to have another guest next month who works in a big dispatch center. But having that built in, which most good dispatch centers have that built in, the dispatcher's paying attention to what you said, smoke showing. So they would ask you, are you saying a working fire?
Yes.
That's huge,
Yeah.
because again, the way we did it in my department, and I'm not ashamed of it, but we could have been better. If each of us arriving say a different thing, they might skip that working fire.
Mm-hmm.
They might not say that, and then dispatch in a good dispatch center should come back to you and say, do you have a working fire? And they know what they're supposed to do and who they're supposed to send and notify and all of that. But many departments or dispatch centers, they're very small. And some of them are county dispatch centers with multiple agencies that they're dispatching for. I'll give you an example. Oh, yeah. Well, that's what we had. There were police dispatchers that also dispatched fire. And the supervisor was a sergeant in the dispatch center. So it kind of creates, not the police sergeant doesn't have the experience of a fire.
No. Hey, Rocco,
lieutenant.
take a ride over to the Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, maybe in Jersey they say it like that. So, I'll give you an example.
There will be times that, I would be given that arrival report, and I might say, I have a heavy smoke condition. They may say, do you have a working fire? I say, yes, I do, but I'll let you know where it is. Because I don't even know what building's on fire.
Yes, I've been there too.
Yeah. So you got to understand the triggers, that your department uses,
Yeah, you talked about mutual aid, and that is tremendous. But I'll give you a big example. Long Island's a very densely populated area that's served primarily by volunteers, and there's county dispatchers in each one of them. So there are towns that border Suffolk County and Nassau County. Example, they still use codes. So Nassau County, a working fire is a signal 10. They would never say, we have a working fire, we have a signal 10 in Nassau County. All units go back in service in Nassau County is a signal 13. Suffolk County, a working fire is a signal 13.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and
see how that works?
They border on each other. I believe in plain language. It's a working fire. Blah, 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 blah. But they haven't switched to that. What did you call the apparatus that brings water and hose to your fire? What is that called?
It's an engine.
It's an engine. So engine 5 on scene. So you got a mutual aid in Nassau County. 662 is on scene.
Yes.
And if it came from another department, what is 662?
Yes. So back in, I'm going to say around 1994, before regionalization. They had a big job in Union City, and they lost like 16 buildings. It wrapped right around the block. It was a freezing night. And what was happening was there were buildings behind buildings lighting off, and carriage houses, and it was really a disaster. And a lot of it had to do because there was so much mutual aid, and there was just really the communications was like Tower of Babel firefighting. So what they did, the county departments, this again before regionalization, they wound up adopting a mutual communications policy across the 5 departments, which are now North Hudson Regional, plus Hoboken. And they eliminated all of the signals. They also eliminated the units, like Unit 662. Now it would be Truck 662 or Ladder 662. They would eliminate Unit 203. Now it's Engine 203, or Battalion 5 instead of Car 5, or Unit 605. So they eliminated all that because it was so confusing. And this was probably 4 or 5 years before we actually it might even be more than that, before we actually regionalized. But they recognized that this is what we needed to do. And then we started getting involved in common SOPs because, high rises were automatic aid, and we all started wearing the same SCBA, and, they just recognized that need, whereas nobody's right, but everybody could be wrong. So let's put this together and let's figure this out, and it worked much, much better. It really did. And then you go down into, like where I was a director in Monmouth County, and it's alphabet soup, and numerical soup. It's, 3, 6, 7, 9, 3, 3, 6, 5, 7, and nobody knows anything about it. It's so completely out of whack with NIMS. And you know what? Nobody cares. Nobody cares because everybody has their fiefdom. And it's nearly criminal, to be quite honest.
My sandbox. Well,
yeah.
I'll give an example, and I'm not going to name the city because I really like these people.
Mm-hmm.
But a city nearby me has 3 separate fire departments. There's a district, there's one section that's all volunteer, and one that's the downtown city department.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all at different frequencies.
Yeah.
So, for example, if there's a fire in the district, and I'm going to, again, leave it nameless, and the city, although now they're at least automatically sending automatic aid, because it should be, in my opinion, should be one city department. But if they're not, they're sending automatic aid, and at least sending an engine to the district or from the district to the city. But I listen, I'm a buff still, and the people from the outside district are still on their same frequency, their home frequency, instead of, and they have a switch on their radio. They can the whole incident should be on one frequency.
Right.
And someone could, in my opinion, could die because an urgent message was transmitted on the wrong frequency. And if it's not a common dispatch center, it may be missed completely.
Right.
And the IC is not going to know that someone's in trouble, or that an engine lost water because of a failed hydrant, or anything to that effect. So communication is so important on the fire ground, but it's also, like we started, in management and in training. What does it mean? I was in recruit school, and it was so long ago. Someone told me to foot the ladder.
It's a one-room classroom.
No, it wasn't.
One-room schoolhouse.
No, when I started on the career side, not when I started on the volunteer side, that was a one-room school. But there was instructors from Hartford and instructors from New Haven teaching at the academy I went to. And a guy starts yelling at me because of the way I foot the ladder. He goes, "That's healing the ladder. This is what I mean by footing the ladder." I'm like, "What?" You know what I mean? So the academy or the instructors should all be on the same page, whether you're from the different department, a different county. These people in your recruit class, mostly, me, I had a lot of experience by the time I went to a career recruit class, but they have no experience. What you say you better say what you mean so that
Yeah.
tomorrow when an instructor from a different department doesn't come in and start yelling. They don't yell so much anymore. But at that time, oh my God.
Yeah, you still get yelling, but yeah,
Yeah,
you're
but
right.
not
There has
like
to
that.
be there's got to be consistency in the message. If you have and that's a problem sometimes with fire academies, and I saw that when I was a director in the beginning, and that was something that I said, you know what, when I met with everybody, we have to fix this. I mean, I don't care how you want to do it, but it all has to be the same, and that was really important. Like when we one of the things I saw that was really needed to do that was laddering. Because some guys would have their hands in some spots, some guys foot in other spots, some guys were communications this way, some guys communications that way. And what happens is, and the students will always tell you, well, I'm being told 7 different things, So, as a director of a fire academy or somebody in charge of a fire academy, and again, it bleeds right back into a department. You can't have different language on a fire department. The 4 shifts don't mean anything. 4 shifts means you better still have the same language. If you don't have the same language, that could come home to roost on your fire ground. Whenever that confusion pops its head up, nothing good ever comes from it. Nothing good comes from it.
No. And you know what? You look at the NIOSH reports, communication is on every
Mm-hmm.
single line of duty death as a causal factor. It may not be the main factor, but it's on every single report. If you read them, there's, the same 5 things show up every time.
Yeah, it's
Um,
causal.
You know what? It's
I
the
always
best I
thought it
can
was
do.
casual. I'm like, casual? Why is it a casual factor? And then I looked at it, I go, oh man, no, it's causal. But I had never heard that word before. But it
Well,
makes sense.
you do know there's people from all over the country listening to us 2 clowns talk.
I know.
Causal,
Causal.
you know, just get me some
That's okay.
water.
That's get me water. Just get
Get
me
me water.
water. Well, and that's another thing, like, how do you know, hand signals like this,
Oh yeah.
right? But that don't mean the same everywhere.
No.
This don't mean the same everywhere.
No.
Yeah, mostly everywhere, but it's like we said about bumping. Bumping is when the attack engine and the supply engine switch positions because they're coming into the block, one behind the other, and normally, that wouldn't happen if the ladder's already there. But, these are things, and this was something that when we heard it before regionalization, we were like, what is that? And that's when we started, training and familiarizing with everybody because we started doing a lot more mutual aid and automatic aid. We were dispatched out of the same place, and Bumpy became part of like the landscape for us even before we regionalized, but there, there's a lot of that. And departments can't see beyond that. They're very myopic, myopic. Here we go. Right. They can't see beyond their own sort of egos and understand that, we're here for a common cause. And that common cause really is to save lives and property and not get our people killed in the process.
And not end up on YouTube.
And not end up on, listen, we're going to end up on YouTube anyway. Every
But
single
hopefully
fire,
for
good, bad, or ugly, can be picked apart.
a good reason we should be on YouTube because we made a grab or we stopped the fire. It shouldn't be because
Yeah.
we couldn't get water out of our pump.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
And you know what? It can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And you look at that and, listen, 99% of the time it goes back to communication. Either communication on the fireground or communication before the fireground or communication in the firehouse, 99% of the time, that's why, and you talk about a basic root, foundation of this is, and I ask this in every class, what's in order? What's in order? Right. And so everyone knows what an order is, but orders are given different ways in different places, So, what we did in North Hudson, and we did it with every recruit class in Monmouth, the very first thing we told them is what an order is. Because I can't have them not understanding what an order is. It's anything from a superior to a subordinate in any way that it's said. Do me a favor, You know, you're not going to say, do me a favor, go rescue that guy out of a window, but I might say, do me a favor, can you open the window in the classroom? You know, and it's the
How
same
about
thing. It's still
this?
an order.
How about this? When you get a chance, I need you to take the SCBAs out of the back of my truck and put it in the air pack room. And then
Hmm.
at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you go to the firefighter and say, "Hey, how come the bottles are still in my car?"
Mm. Now
You
that's
said to me,
interesting.
you
That's
said,
interesting.
when
I
you
may
get a
use that in the
chance.
classroom when you get a chance. Well, I didn't get a chance yet. So you're giving them an option, you know. Yeah, I never thought of that, but
I've
yeah,
been
that's a
guilty of
tough
that, and
one.
that's why I said it. And it wasn't SCBA. I don't even remember what it was. But hey, it's 4 hours later. What? How come
Yeah,
it's not done? Well, you
yeah,
said when I get a chance, and I just looked at him, and I actually busted out in a grin. Like,
yeah.
you're right.
That's a tough one. Well, that was
Could
your
you take
fault,
care
right?
of that now, please?
Yeah, yeah. When
You
you get a
change it in a
chance, instead of,
friendly, in a
hey,
in a
do me a
friendly.
favor.
Yeah,
Do me a
same thing.
favor means now, or close to now. When you get a chance, ooh, yeah, you got to choose your words. There's the lesson for today, right? Choose your words carefully,
Yeah,
right?
everything you say. You
Because
know.
what you say and what you mean and what you wanted them to hear are two different things. You know, like Flood used to say, communication is a circulatory system of the fire department. You know, it's everywhere, and it goes through every, organ and muscle. It goes through everything. And if it's not working properly, then the circulatory system is cut off, and now you have, what happens when your circulatory system gets cut off. You get strokes and aneurysms and heart attacks, and if you look at metaphors for those kind of things, these
Yeah.
are things that happen, right?
Well, one thing you also have to be careful of. You know me pretty well, and I know you pretty well. You can be pretty sarcastic. Um, you
Yes.
say something kind of as a joke,
Hmm.
like, "Hey, I want you to go in and just take all the stuff on Lieutenant Smith's desk and put it in his drawer and hide it on him." And you're saying it as a joke, but then the firefighter goes in and does it. you know and that's not an example that really happened, but you
Hmm.
say stuff like that, and people
Well,
could it should
sarcasm
be.
comes with the job, and the firehouse humor and the sarcasm is just part of the job, and that's where you're right. You get somebody that's not quite as seasoned, they don't take it the same way. I mean, you got listen. Anybody on the job, or even you're a volunteer, you think different. You joke differently. You listen to things differently. Your whole sort of mentality sort of changes when you get on the job, and your sense of humor changes. Like,
God.
yeah. So these are other things, and again, like in this day and age, what you can say and can't say in the firehouse that's a whole nother
Oh
ball
my
game.
God.
Like I don't even know we could get into that, but again, you got to know what you can say and what you can't say.
Yeah, but you never know.
No, you never know.
I'm going to say you never know today what somebody's going to find as offensive, and
Yeah.
you do have to tread lightly, and that's something that comes with a promotion. As you move up, you have to clean up your act a little bit. Not saying you
Hmm.
should still have a sense of humor. I'll give you an example. When I was a shift commander, just before I retired, I would have lunch with the guys every day. I would talk with them. I would be there, but I would be there 15 minutes, and I would go to my desk. So they could drift into their humor that I might have to step into. I don't mean, outright racism or sexism, but I do mean there's some borderline stuff. As the battalion chief, I should be stopping it. But if I'm not there, they can have fun as long as they're not hurting anybody and being
Right.
totally offensive.
Right.
If I'm not there, I got to let it go. But if I am there, I might have to be that guy.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. The first time it lands on your plate, it's like, wow, I should have said something there, or
Right.
we should have said something beforehand, so that never actually happened.
Right.
You know.
And a lot of times I'm okay with what they're saying, but officially
Mhm.
I shouldn't be okay with what they're saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, the other thing
So,
too is is firefighter profanity disorder.
oh
You
yeah,
know, you're off for 3 days. Maybe the first 12 hours after you're off, it's still part of your language. But you walk into that firehouse, and all of a sudden, I don't know what it is, but all of a sudden, like the firefighter profanity disorder kicks in, and then what happens is, you're shopping in the store, and you're in one aisle and your firefighters are in another aisle, and you hear the F-bomb being floated around there, and you go running, you go over there like, you guys can't say that. But before you get there, there's already a woman with two little kids going like this in their face. There's a time and a place for a lot of this stuff, and
absolutely.
unfortunately there's less places and less time now for a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff.
You know
But
what?
it's still, a firehouse humor is different than any other humor, and you have to
Right,
be careful where you bring it.
right. And the formal you or the formal supervisor or the formal chief or the formal captain belongs on the fire ground. It belongs on the training ground.
Mhm.
But it doesn't necessarily belong in every conversation in the firehouse. I'm going to give you one example. A guy who was senior to me, his name is Brian, great guy. Actually, I just saw him at the retirement thing the other day. And he goes, "Hey, Duff." And I go, "Yeah," we started talking. The assistant chief at the time, probably 3 hours later, calls me into his office and he says, "Close the door." And I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "You can't let your people talk to you like that." And I said, "Like what?" He goes, "Well, I heard Brian talking to you on the truck room floor and he called you Duff." I go, "Yeah, Brian can call me Duff. Was senior to me when I got hired. He always knew me as Duff, but I assure you, on the fire ground, he'll call me captain or chief or whatever my rank is at the time.
Mhm.
But that's okay." But Lou, who just started a month ago, he can't call me Duff. He has to call me chief
Mhm.
all the time in the firehouse. And there's a different level. Brian wasn't being disrespectful. He goes, "Well, I don't want to see it anymore." I go, "Chief, I if it happens, I'm certainly not going to reprimand someone who calls me Duff walking at the kitchen table or walking in the
Mhm.
kitchen and but his belief of the rank structure is that's how it's always supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, and he
And
outranks you.
oh, absolutely.
And
But
there you go.
but but I always did call him chief because he was a
Mhm.
chief. And but it's all in appropriate locations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Training ground, it's absolutely chief or captain or whatever the rank
Mhm.
might be. But a guy who's 5 years or 10 years senior to me having lunch in the firehouse, it's okay. And
No, it's
again,
it's what he's used to, But the department, yeah, I mean, there should be protocol for, that type of communication and that sort of thing. But yes, the firehouse kitchen is a little bit different when you're dealing with those things, and but that's where people have to understand. So that's where, when you're dealing with these younger people, that has to be part of the expectation set, when they
right,
get on the job. Don't let them fail before you set an expectation for them.
that is so correct. So
Oh
again,
man,
it
I
goes
gotta
back
write
on
that
the
down.
department.
Hang on, I gotta write that down. Don't let them fail before you set an expectation for them. That's going to be a slide.
You're not the first one who's ever said that.
I'm sure I'm not the first one
Except
ever
the
said.
term that I always use, don't set them up for failure.
Yeah. All right.
But
All right. You're right.
but the thing is, if that's back on the department again, if that's your policy,
Mm-hmm.
it's got to be there when they get hired. And this is what you address all officers by rank at all times
Mm-hmm.
in the fire department.
Well, do you
It
hear
has to
people?
be.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I
I'll
was
go
gonna
with
say
you.
there
Go,
has
go.
to be a policy. If it's not taught to them, it's not. Well, you should know better. If you're driving the pump, this is what you're supposed to do. Well, if you didn't teach me, I'm not supposed to know.
How about over the radio?
Ugh.
Hey Joe. Hey Nick. Listen, I got Frank, Vinny, and Rocco over here.
Yep.
We got this 2.5 in the back, and this friggin' thing ain't going out. You know, I mean,
Yep.
you got to be careful of the familiarity of the kitchen with the formal sort of
Yes.
communication for the fireground, for the public, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And you know what? I've always been a believer that the day room is the firefighter's domain.
Yeah.
That's their home.
Chief is a guest in the firehouse.
I agree. I absolutely agree with that. And I don't mean that they should be disrespectful to the chief. You're like, what are you doing here? I actually was speaking to the new chief in Wallingford the other day. He's from the outside. Very unusual there. And he was talking about it, and he says, I said, the guys, seem to like you. They have a lot of respect for you. They like that you stop and have coffee with them. And he goes, yeah, I've come in a few times, had breakfast, but I won't just stop in on a Sunday morning and have breakfast unless I'm invited. Because Sunday mornings, and it's like Sunday sauce in the firehouse. That's a tradition,
Sunday sauce, Sunday pancakes.
Right. In Wallingford, breakfast was always a big deal on Sundays. It's all heart attack city, though. It's like I went there a couple of weeks. Oh my God! I wonder I'm still alive the way they eat there. The amount of bacon and pancakes and everything else that's cooked. Just sausage every Sunday morning. It's like, ugh. I don't eat like that anymore.
And then for lunch is sausage and pepper sandwiches or meatball sandwiches, and then for dinner is the pasta with the leftover meatballs and sausage. Sunday is what was when I was younger. I didn't like working Sundays because it was just a day I could be down the shore, or I could be up the ski house. But as I got older, and more time, Sunday was always the best day to work. It just was. I liked working. It's funny how the days I liked working when I was younger were the days I didn't like working when I got older. It's just, yeah. It was interesting, but it's communication is it's the lifeblood of the fire service. They can't do what you want them to do if they don't understand what you're telling them to do.
Correct. But the flip side of that is if you're requesting something from the administration or your supervisors, you better know how to present it. Like I'm going to use an example because I was never a paramedic in my department. I was an EMT, but they want a specific tool, a new tool on the ambulance. Give it to me on paper, explaining what the benefits are and the drawbacks of and then I'll pass it up. And I'm just using that as an example. The Blitz fire nozzle, that's something new. They're in every department now. They were only brand new, probably the last 6 months I worked, and it was only on one engine. They were trying it out. But the guy who wanted it, he came in with so much stuff that the department purchased one. We'll try it out, and we'll see how it works out. The first fire it was used at, it was a high ranch or split level with an attached garage. There was a car burning in the garage. It was ripping, but you could see it was extending. What the heck was that?
That's my phone, my daughter. I'll just tell her I'm on the.
Well, we're going to be done in a few minutes.
Yeah,
but you could see it was extending. It was starting to show on the eaves of the house. Heavy smoke pushing, though. It wasn't rolling out. It was pushing out. So they dropped. They were short a man on the engine because an extra guy rode in on the ambulance to the hospital. So they dropped the Blitz fire in the driveway directly into the garage while they simultaneously pulled 1 3/4 inches to the front door to go into the house. And it worked really well, because they had a hydrant very quickly, so plenty of water. And a crew went to operate the 1 3/4 inches before the other units got there. There was a truck there. They did the Blitz fire before they went in. So it really worked out. And the chief of departments showed up into that. And very shortly after that, there was a Blitz fire on the tailboard of every engine in the town.
Yeah. That's when things work. And and then people see that it works, then everybody starts to buy into it, but those are the things you have to present properly, otherwise
Correct.
people are going to resist that type of stuff,
Well, the acting chief at that time didn't like the idea. So you can just pull a 2.5. But the thing about the blitz fire, so he wasn't sold on it, but I'll try one. And he saw it, he liked it, and he went on. Same thing when I was maybe a lieutenant, we switched to smoothbores.
Mm-hmm.
I asked, and the chief said, no,
big war.
We're not going to. So I said to the chief after 6 months more, I said, how about when I come on duty, one of the pre-connects, because we're mostly private dwelling fires. We have apartments, but mostly private dwellings. 200-foot pre-connect is almost every house we can get in town.
Mm-hmm.
So can I put a smoothbore on the rear pre-connect when my shift is on duty? And he goes, yeah, but you make sure it goes like this. You make sure it goes back in the compartment at the end of your shift. And it slowly became the primary attack nozzle.
One shift,
the
and
department.
2 shifts, and 3 shifts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was somebody on overtime from another shift who wasn't a fan of the smoothbores. He was the engine boss on overtime, and he absolutely loved it, And then it slowly became the primary attack nozzle. And I'm not going to argue which one is better. I know what I like better, but whatever they give you is what you have to use. Because the chief and the, whatever it is. So, when I have people in class say, well, what do they give you? Make sure you know how it works, what its drawbacks are, what its, good points are. The smoothbore, one of the things is it has more of a tendency to kink. Understand that. Stretch the hose properly. Be on the right side of all that works. I think the automatic nozzles, the stream always looks good, no matter what.
Yeah.
So they're pluses and minuses, but just know how the tools they give you work.
Exactly. So, but again, it's a function of communication, right?
Yeah.
Why is it better? Why do I think it's better? What do you think? Like let's talk about this. Other than 3 shifts saying, well, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? Why? And then automatically they're against it. It don't even matter. They're against it.
Yeah, I see that everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame. Look, St. Louis County, the whole county has the same SOPs. Imagine that.
Yeah, sure.
And they're heavy on quints, so they're all the same. The first in quint is an engine.
Right.
The second in is water supply or truck. I don't know exactly what they are, but
but they're all on the same page.
It's a rival order, period. Yeah. Because when people talk about quints, I always say, well, you show up at the same time. What are you? Am I a truckie or am I an engine guy? But they work that out, and it works for them.
Right.
Again, pre-communication, pre-planning, training together.
Pre-fire street intelligence.
Yes. And if you run consistent mutual aid, like where I live in the sticks, and they're all small volunteer companies. Mm-hmm. Every fire is a mutual aid, and it's automatic aid now too. You get a fire Tuesday afternoon, you get in 3 towns coming to a house fire in Durham, where I live. They all better know what each other's doing. Whatever. But anyway, in summation, all this, communication is everything. You said it's the circulatory system. I like that a lot. But the bottom line is, make sure they receive the message too. They taught you that in your first office class you ever took. You send the message. There's how you send the message. It's the receiver confirming back what you told me. Hey, I need you to take a roof ladder and put it in the back. So you're telling me you want me to put a roof ladder up on a roof? No, I just want you to bring the roof ladder because it's only 16 feet to the peak. To the ridge. Do you know what I mean? What do you really mean?
Yeah, what do you really mean? Be specific, right? Leave leave no wiggle room in the information, right?
Yeah, you have a 14-foot roof ladder. And I say, get the roof ladder to the back. I didn't mean to the peak. I meant to the ridge. But whose fault was that if they didn't understand it? So they have to repeat the message back that you gave them, and
You got
not
to
an
close the loop.
entire. Yeah. Okay. Yes, that's what I need. Okay.
Right.
See ya. So anyway, I think this is a great subject. We kind of ended up here by accident because we were going to try to get a dispatcher in with us. And I'm going to say it before that does happen next month, hopefully. They're the unsung heroes. If it's done right, they can
Yeah.
make or break an incident.
Yeah. A great dispatcher will make or break an incident at times. Absolutely.
Oh my God. Especially in the event of a Mayday or other urgent stuff. If the IC is overwhelmed, the dispatch that's listened to Fireground, and maybe not the dispatch channel, might hear something that the IC did not hear.
Yes. Yeah.
And so important. So if you have the capability of training your dispatchers, please do.
Yeah.
If you shut out because the police department has it, do what you can.
Well, one of the things that I remember we did, and I don't remember how long ago it was, they put the dispatchers through the classrooms portion of Firefighter 1, like a condensed version, but they put them through it, and and they asked all the questions. They gave them the thing of the glossary, so they understood what we say, and do you have questions? And I think they did before. They said, look, we're going to do this on such and such a day. Write down questions that you have before it so we can start to address that, because, we don't always know what you're not understanding, and you don't always know what we're not understanding. So your dispatchers should have some fire service knowledge, some basic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add one more thing. Some places, they don't send officers to school when they get promoted. Well, you passed the test, you're going to start as a captain next Thursday. And they don't give him any of this officer training if it wasn't required to take the test. The communication portion of most leadership classes and most fire officers classes goes through all the things we talk about, and how important that is. As a new officer, if you can communicate effectively and listen truly, it will make your job much better and your company run much better as well. And I think it's where we fail very, very often.
Yeah. Well, listen, 99% of our kerfuffles are communication based.
Yes. I'll give you a quick example. Your safety nut about turnout gear and chin straps and waist straps, which I think is awesome. But there's a problem with that if you're the officer preaching that and you're not doing it on scene. A city that's nearby where I am, the incident commander was a white belt cap and whatever station where he had on with his radio slung across his shoulder. And I saw that all the time. It made me nuts. What are you going to do if Firefighter Jones come past you with his waist strap dragging?
Yeah,
you're going to chastise
ain't going to help you when a brick falls on you.
Yeah. Body language. That says things. You dress for the fire. You're ready to go, even though you're the incident commander and your position is outside. You still need to be dressed as a firefighter.
Exactly.
And you need to look like a firefighter. So that's part of communications, your body language, the faces you make.
Yeah.
When someone says, oh my God, when someone says something that sounds stupid to you and you do that head tilt and smirk in the lips, not very professional. They feel that I just got chastised.
Well, what are you going to do? Sometimes you can't hide that stuff.
So anyway, I'm going to close out pretty quickly. To those of you who celebrate Merry Christmas to you and your families.
Merry Christmas.
If you work and stay safe. If you celebrate Hanukkah, God bless you. Have a joyous festival of lights. So we'll see you next year.
Happy Kwanzaa.
Happy Kwanzaa. And whatever it is you celebrate it with your whole heart and your whole family. We didn't talk about FDIC today, but we'll pick up on that.
We'll get back to it in January. Yep, New Year. All good.
Yep. Well, again, thank you so much for the time. And we went through this faster than I thought we would, that we'd be
Yeah,
looking for things
exactly.
to
Yeah, well,
talk about.
we always got stuff to say, whether it's stupid or not is, it don't matter to us.
Well, pretty much it does. They can't fire me anymore.
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
fire engineering could, but you know what? I'm not going to miss the paycheck.
Yeah. So listen, we wish everybody out there a Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, Maureen Duff, and your family. And
Thank you, sir.
all good, bro.
And to all your girls. Now, one more, get back to my regular monthly closing. If you're shopping for the holidays, if you get a chance to buy a gift made in America, you put American workers to work and helping them pay their taxes, which in turn helps us have a fire department. So if you have a choice, please try to buy American.
In firefighting and public safety, reliability is key. For over 20 years, TheFireStore has equipped first responders with trusted gear featuring brands like MSA Carnes for helmets and Seek for thermal imaging cameras. Stay prepared. Visit thefirestore.com today. The Firestore, your trusted safety partner.
This podcast is brought to you by Flex 7 from TenCate Protective Fabrics. Flexible, comfortable, and powered with the strength of enforced technology. Flex 7 outer shell fabric is made to move. To learn more, visit tencatefabrics.com/Flex 7.
Breathing in diesel exhaust fumes is like walking into a fire without a mask. Over time, those toxins lead to cancer. Protect yourself with Magnegrip, the easiest, most reliable exhaust removal system that features a true 100% seal to eliminate diesel exhaust fumes. To get free grant assistance,